The 2024 presidential race is a toss-up, according to prediction markets on Polymarket. Kamala Harris has a 51% chance of winning, compared to Trump's 46% chance. It's important to note here, though, that these odds are not a direct translation of voter preference. Rather, betting markets reflect who the public thinks will win the election. And they differ from the polls in that a 5-point difference here is far less significant than a 5-point margin in a single poll. Consider that your odds of flipping a coin and getting heads is 50%. Harris is at 51%. Now, those are the overall odds, but how do the two contenders fare in the key battleground states on the Electoral College map? As that will ultimately determine who hits the necessary 270 electoral votes. Polymarket also has individual markets with the latest odds for Trump and Harris in each state, which is what we'll be using to fill out this electoral map here. The first thing we'll do is label all of the states in which Republicans and Democrats have a better than 90% chance of winning. The safe states for Kamala Harris include Washington, Oregon, California, and Hawaii, New Mexico, Colorado, Minnesota, and Illinois. Then in the Northeast, New York, Maine's 1st Congressional District, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and D.C. Now, Harris is expected to win each of these states by very comfortable margins, just as Biden did by at least 7 points each in 2020. They provide her with a solid foundation of 206 electoral votes. For Trump now, his solid red states are Alaska, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, North and South Dakota, Nebraska statewide and the 1st and 3rd congressional districts here, Kansas, Oklahoma, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia, and South Carolina. Now back over here on our map, with the lone exception of Iowa, the rest of these solid red states have not backed a Democratic presidential candidate since the start of the 21st century, and Trump carried them all by at least 10 percentage points in 2020. So these states provide Trump with 131 electoral votes, and there are 201 votes still left up for grabs on our map now, though most of the remaining states left unshaded here in gray do hold a strong amount of lean toward one candidate. Let's go ahead and label our likely states now where either Trump or Harris have between an 80 to 90% chance of winning. These will be colored in the second darkest shade of blue and red, indicating that one candidate is heavily favored, but an upset is not out of the question. For Trump, that includes Maine's 2nd congressional district. Both Maine and Nebraska are unique in that they split their electoral votes, awarding 2 to the statewide winner and then 1 per congressional district. Trump won this northern rural 2nd district in Maine by comfortable margins in both 2016 and 2020. He currently has an 84% chance right now, according to Polymarket. The former president is also heavily favored to hold Ohio as well, 17 electoral votes. It's bordering on the safe category here, with an 89% chance for Republicans. It was an Obama state in 2008 and 2012, but then backed Trump by 8-point margins in 2016 and 2020. Democrats have really just struggled to remain competitive here amid the Trump-era Republican Party's strength among white, working-class, non-college educated voters. Trump is also heavily favored to keep Florida red for a 4th straight election cycle, 30 electoral votes, the 3rd most in the nation. The Sunshine State was for a long time synonymous with the term swing state, but is now a strongly Republican-leaning state after Trump carried it by an even larger margin in 2020 than he did in 2016. And then more recently in the 2022 midterm elections, Republicans, Governor Ron DeSantis, and Senator Marco Rubio were both re-elected by more than 15 points each. Currently, Polymarket has Trump with an 85% chance of winning here in Florida. Back on our map, the state of Texas is also likely for Trump, 40 electoral votes here, the 2nd most of any state. In the 2020 election, Joe Biden won 46.5% of the votes, the most for a Democrat since 1976. But even as urban areas like Dallas and San Antonio here have trended left over the last couple decades, the heavily Hispanic and right-trending Rio Grande Valley here in South Texas has dampened Democratic hopes of flipping Texas blue anytime soon. Polymarket has Trump with an 88% chance of winning right now, his best odds in any of the 3 likely states here, though together they do lift him up all the way to 219 electoral votes, right there with Harris's 206. Now let's fill out the 3 likely blue states for Kamala Harris though. First, the Commonwealth of Virginia, 13 electoral votes at stake here. Joe Biden became the first Democrat since 1944 to carry Virginia by a double-digit margin, 10 points here in 2020. The growth and diversification of Northern Virginia, Nova, including the D.C. suburbs here, enabled Biden's victory in 2020 without his campaign even spending all that much time there. Yet here in 2024, the polling for Biden had been subpar, to say the least. At the time of his withdrawal, he only led Trump by 1.3%, based on 23 polls, with even several of the most recent surveys showing Trump in the lead or in a tied race. Now with Harris in the race, we have seen her claw back a lot of the support that Biden had lost, especially with Black and younger voters. The latest Polymarket odds do give her an 88% chance of winning in Virginia, so hovering closer and closer to safe territory here. The vice president is also heavily favored to win the 2 competitive New England states of New Hampshire and Maine. Polymarket gives Democrats an 85% chance of winning here in New Hampshire, and then 88% in Maine. Joe Biden won Maine by 9 points in 2020, and New Hampshire by 7 after they were both decided by less than 3 points in 2016. Neither state has backed a GOP presidential candidate since at least the 2000 election, and it would take a seriously good environment for Trump to flip either state this November. Now, that was the kind of environment that we may have been trending toward had Biden stayed in the race, but again, this is where Kamala Harris stops the bleeding, so to speak. Finally now, we can also assign Nebraska's 2nd congressional district a likely blue rating. Taking a look over here at the market via Polymarket here, we see Democrats with an 85% chance of winning. Joe Biden did carry this district by 7 points in 2020. It's a rapidly left-trending district, as it's pretty much entirely based around the city of Omaha, and therefore is very urban and has a large number of college graduates, 2 demographic factors that have favored Democratic candidates over the last 2 decades. Now, the 7 states remaining are the 7 states that entered this cycle as the core swing states, the key battlegrounds projected to be the most strongly contested by both campaigns and ultimately wind up as the closest in terms of margin for a second straight election cycle. They were each decided by less than 3 points in 2020 and flipped from Trump in 2016 to Biden in 2020. That is, with the exception of Nevada, which went blue in both elections, and North Carolina, which voted for Trump twice. Before we do look at the latest probabilities here, please take a second to consider subscribing to my channel down below. It's completely free, and it does help me out tremendously. According to my channel analytics page, nearly 90% of my viewers are not subscribed. Let's try and get that down to 50-50 or so by election day. Now, across these 7 states, neither Trump or Harris currently hold a better than 70% chance of winning, so they will all be marked down either as tilting in one direction or as pure toss-ups. Let's start with the tilt states, where the chance of winning is between 55% and 70%. For Trump, that includes North Carolina, 16 electoral votes, it gained 1 in the census. Trump has a 62% chance of winning, according to Polymarket. North Carolina has not elected a Democrat to federal office since Barack Obama in 2008, as the GOP has now won the last 3 presidential and last 5 U.S. Senate races. Notably, though, all 8 of those major statewide races were decided by less than 6 points, positioning the Tar Heel state as a consistently purple, yet Republican-leaning state. Trump consistently led Biden by around 4 to 8 points in the DDHQ and the Hill polling average dating all the way back to last June. Now, there is no polling average yet available for Harris versus Trump, but there's good reason to believe that she would perform better than Biden, as North Carolina has a large number of young college graduates and African American voters as well, two demographics the Harris campaign is training a lot of resources on. For Harris now, though, her tilt states include the entirety of the core Rust Belt trio: Wisconsin with its 10 electoral votes, Michigan 15 electoral votes, and then Pennsylvania 19 electoral votes, all have Harris slightly favored. Over on Polymarket, she has a 57% chance in Wisconsin, 64% in Michigan, and then 56% in Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania and Wisconsin are right on the edge of dipping into toss-up territory, whereas Michigan is more comfortably in her corner. Together, they do lift the vice president up to exactly 270 electoral votes now, the exact number she needs to be elected the first female president of the United States. Trump, meanwhile, trails behind with 235, and even if he does sweep the remaining Sunbelt battlegrounds here, he would still fall short. As per Polymarket's latest odds, all three are toss-ups. Nevada gives Harris a 54% chance of winning, Arizona is 52% for Trump, and then Georgia is 54% for Trump. So, going back over to our electoral map, they're each going to be placed in the toss-up rating category, which does mean that the current electoral college projection, according to prediction markets, is Kamala Harris 270, Donald Trump 235. Now, if anything, this should reinforce the prevailing belief that the 2024 presidential race has shifted following President Joe Biden's withdrawal, from strongly in favor of Trump to now a toss-up. Neither candidate is clearly favored, with the election coming down to near coin flip margins in a handful of key states. As always,